Hello everyone, I'm Fozzie or Cam, and I'm here as always with my co-host Will. Will, how you doing today?
I am doing okay, Cam, because there was a comment in the comment
Oh
section
yeah,
of our last podcast. I'm not going to
yeah.
say who put this comment. I would like to start by saying that they put actually they didn't just put one comment, they put four comments. Luckily, three
Four?
comments. Yes, luckily there were actually and all of them. One arrived 13 days ago, three arrived 2 days ago.
Oh
The
my
three comments that
goodness.
arrived 2 days ago, I am happy to say, were actually about what was being talked about on the podcast. But the other comment, and again, I will not be mentioning who put this comment. I will not be mentioning this person by name. But this person says, "I'm sorry I couldn't be there to co-host the Everything podcast today, but I should be back soon. It will be great to have us three hosts back together again. We are a powerful trio. I would just like to say to that person, you know what the deal is. We have said this before, and I will say it again right now. Uh, um, you will not be invited back on this podcast.
Until you improve your behavior,
Yes,
because
and until you rescind that statement, we are
yep.
happy to have you on as a guest. We love having you on as a guest. Some of our favorite episodes are when you come on as a guest. But until you rescind that statement, you will not be allowed back on this podcast. So I would just like to reiterate that to that person because they seem to have just not learned their lesson yet.
And it's you know what? It's actually really unfair to us because we sacrifice so much when we invite he who shall not be named on the podcast, and he's had the privilege of being on this show. That's something, I mean, a lot of people just haven't had, right? So I think it's very, very strange that he's saying this when it's almost like a gift to be on the podcast. And I think he just needs to realize that he's not a member of the podcast. Like right here, this is, I know you can't read it because of my camera, but this right here, this is an Everything Podcast mug. I don't think he who shall not be named has an Everything Podcast mug. And obviously, as we know, he's taken your podcast mug and pretended that it's his, which we're all aware of, and all of our viewers are aware of. So I don't even know why he tries to pretend that he is a part of the podcast. So
It's really too bad, and I don't even necessarily enjoy talking about it, but I just felt like it was worthwhile to bring it up to remind this person of where we stand on it. Although I would like to give this person credit, Cam, because I hate to sidetrack here, but this is important. He who must not be named, and I will still call this person that
doesn't
until
deserve a
he
name yet.
yes, until this person changes their behavior. But he who must not be named just sent me a text saying that not this season not this upcoming season of The Voice, which will be season 26, but season 27. So Adam Levine announced that he was leaving The Voice after, I believe, season 16. And he and Blake Shelton's rivalry was a huge part of that show. Those two were the pillars of the show. They made the show who they are. He who must not be named just sent me a list of the voice coaches for season 27, which again is not this season, but the following season. One of them is Adam Levine.
Oh wow,
He's back.
he's
That
back.
is the last. I thought I thought his run on the show had come to an end. I thought he had done 16 seasons. He was good with that. He was ready to move on, but obviously he's just got that demand to be back on The Voice again. I would like to say I'm surprised he will. I'll be. I'm surprised he's coming back without Blake Shelton, since that was his
Oh
main
yeah.
sparring partner. But I am utterly shocked by this, but I'm also thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
So that is just massive news. Welcome back, Adam. You've certainly been missed. Happy to have you back.
Alrighty. Yeah. Now that I think of it, I don't know why he would have left. He wasn't going on tour for anything. Um,
I
did
mean,
they
doing
did
it
they
for
say the
16.
reason?
I forget exactly what he said, but I think he was, I mean, I forgot his exact reason, but I mean, let's be honest, doing 16 seasons
Oh,
of a
it's
show
okay. I
is
know
is
that.
a, is a long time, and if he, wanted a break from it and stuff, I can totally
Yeah,
understand that.
I didn't even know he was on for 16 years. That makes sense. Anyway, moving on from that for for a little bit. So Mike Coughlin. Oh, darn it! I said his name. I said the name.
Yeah, well, although I do get it. The final thing I'll say to this person, I know he who must not be named has not read Harry Potter, but Cam, I would like to say this. Voldemort, who is the lead villain in Harry Potter, goes by the name He Who
He
Must
will
Not
not
Be
not be
Named.
named.
And
Yes.
and to this person who has previously been a guest on the podcast but is on suspension from the podcast right now, I can't think of what is a better description of the place that you have put yourself in than the fact that you are going by the same name as the lead Harry Potter villain. You should be ashamed of your recent behavior.
I think it's very upsetting, especially the comment where he who shall not be named, which is a reference to the character Voldemort in Harry Potter, as we've established, the main villain of Harry Potter, in fact, goes by he who shall not be named. Just a little comparison to the personality types of both people. Um, he makes the statement, Gilligan's Island is way better than Thomas and Friends. I can almost guarantee he hasn't watched Thomas and Friends. And making a statement like that, and I'm not saying Gilligan's Island is worse than Thomas and Friends. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's not right for him to make a statement that strong, saying that a show is way better than another show, when you haven't watched the show. I mean, you haven't watched Thomas and Friends, right, Will?
No, I haven't, no.
So, and you were making takes like that. You respected my opinion.
It,
So just
yeah.
another reason. He's really just not helping his case, you know?
Yeah, and if it really is true that he hasn't seen, either show, Thomas and Friends
No,
or
I think he's seen
Gilligan's.
Gilligan Island because he made another comment about that.
Okay, but
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 Thomas and Friends, that's
yeah, I mean, I've never heard him. Sorry, not him. He who must not be named. I've never heard that person. I've speak about the show Thomas and Friends before, and one of my big things is not, is obviously not going after stuff that other people love, but beyond that, not going after people about things that you haven't even watched yourself.
it's
So if you
ridiculous.
haven't even watched that, then why are you making that statement? Maybe this
It's
person will never be
upsetting.
back on the podcast again, Cam. Maybe that's just where it's going to be.
That unless we get a sincere apology of some sort, maybe in a comment or in a private text message that we will then share with the podcast, because our viewers deserve to be updated, obviously, on the situation at hand. Once we get that, once we get a sincere apology from he who shall not be named, which once again shares a name with the main villain of the Harry Potter franchise, once we get that, we'll reconsider, possibly, maybe, inviting him back onto the Everything podcast. But for now, I think you all know where we stand.
Yeah, and an emphasis, Cam, I love how you said the word reconsider. I want to put an emphasis on that word. After you apologize, we will reconsider bringing you back on the podcast because a strong case should be made that with this behavior, you should never be on this podcast again. So I really want to put in emphasis on the word reconsider that you used there, Cam.
Yeah, and this has to be a good apology. Like we said, sincere, has to have um, mentioned the things he's done, like this ridiculous Gilligan Island Thomas and Friends diss almost. And yeah, he has to address the specific things he's done. Once he's done that, we'll consider it. Anyway, we've spent way too much time talking about He Who Shall Not Be Named, 9 minutes and 50 seconds to be exact. I think it's time to start our show. So, Star Wars has a new Disney Plus
Yeah.
show out called The Acolyte. Neither of us have watched an episode, but in order to prepare ourselves for the episodes, we are going to look at the Rotten Tomatoes reviews for The Acolyte because, well, they've been, as you know, Star Wars fan base. We've addressed it before. Is very annoying. But this is very, very, very divided. Because as of now, on RottenTomatoes.com, the audience score is a 39%, which is terrible.
And
The
what's
critic
particularly
score.
shocking about that is that usually the Rotten Tomatoes audience scores will be higher than the critics.
I
So
know,
for it to
yeah.
be this much of a divide, that's crazy.
It is. And then when you look at the critic score, we have a 94%. So these critics, they're enjoying The Acolyte a lot more than the fans. And once again, the fans are going to be upset because it is not a white male lead in the show, which is very upsetting. I mean, I'm a fan of Star Wars, and why you can kind of feel ashamed telling people you're a Star Wars fan sometimes when the fan base acts like this. It's just a really annoying thing that the Star Wars fan base does, especially because of how great Star Wars is. They make some great content there, legendary films, but then you have this fan base which is just so close-minded, and it's just really annoying, especially when something as minor as having an African American character in your show or
Oh,
movie,
so that's
because
what this is about? Is the 39% about that?
I don't think that's all
Okay.
what it's about. I think people are just some people are just not on board with the premise, but I think a lot of it goes to the fact that there is not a white male in the lead. I've seen both ends. But I don't think that's the main thing. But it's definitely part of it. It's happened before with Rose in The Last Jedi. It's happened with Finn for all three Star Wars movies. Although I will admit, um, it it hasn't been as bad as the hate for Rose's actor, who unfortunately I forget her name, but she was hated
Kelly
on.
Marie Tran, I
Yeah,
believe.
Kelly Marie Tran. She was
Yeah.
basically taken out of Rise of Skywalker because of the online bullying. So it's just terrible sometimes, that Star Wars fan base. But anyway, let's read into the critic reviews. We'll start off with a negative critic review. This is one of the only ones here. And this is by Fernando. Fernando says, the series has a permanent feeling of deja vu. Characters, roles, and relational dynamics replicate almost rigorously. All right, so it's Star Wars. I mean, it's a franchise that kind of makes sense if it's following the same kind of formula. That's what it is. Um, and we've had shows like Andor that have changed it up, and we didn't really enjoy Andor. And there are people who did enjoy Andor, but there were also people who didn't. So that just kind of sounds like this isn't your type of Star Wars show, Fernando. So I guess that is a respectable take. He gave it a 2 out of 5, which actually isn't as terrible as I mean some of these audience reviews are. Um, but let's go to a positive critic review. This is from Joy Press. I can't say if The Acolyte will evolve into a classic, but it's clear that the show has set off on a unique path that is immensely watchable and could open up a thoughtful new direction for the Star Wars universe. That's what you want. That's literally exactly what I wanted. Just some kind of changes it up. Something kind of different, because obviously from the premise we haven't had anything like this before. A bunch of crimes that need to be solved. We haven't gotten that in a Star Wars movie before. So yeah, definitely an interesting premise there. That's a very good review. What was the score? 3 out of 5. Yeah, it's a pretty good score. Now, well, let's go to some of the audience scores. Oh boy, oh boy. And I want to remind our viewers that obviously the Rotten Tomatoes audience scores are just a bunch of people randomly online. So you could probably just go on any social media and see these reviews. They just happen to be posted on Rotten Tomatoes. Um, First review I'm looking at. Oh boy, half a star. The person starts off by saying, "Ugh, this is as bad as you've heard. Visually, it looks okay, I guess. The fights are fine, but massively overrated by Disney-friendly media. The rest is a garbage fire. Terrible acting, weird pacing, bargain basement writing, and pointless changes to Star Wars mythology." Ooh, that's interesting. It feels wrong throughout, and even compared to other Disney Star Wars, especially to the originals, the prequels, it feels weird. I don't know what to think. Wow.
Wow.
Half a star.
Wow.
That's bad. And I am actually kind of interested by this review because they say they change up the Star Wars mythology. I would actually really like to see how they do that. And I think this is kind of ridiculous. I don't know why people are reviewing shows before the shows end or before the season ends. Because we're 2 episodes in. The season isn't over. So I
True.
guess I can say that for the critics too. But, yeah, and on Rotten Tomatoes, you can't really review episodes like you can on IMDb. So it's just so annoying. Um, People hating on this show for almost no reason, you know. Although I will say that review we just read actually provided some reasons. I don't know how accurate they'll end up being, but at least they weren't just blatantly racist like a lot of other people out there. But moving on from that briefly, I just wanted to touch on an album that we've both been enjoying as of late. "Hit Me Hard and Soft" by Billie Eilish. What an album that is. "Birds of a Feather" might be one of my favorite songs of the year. I just thought it was fantastic. The production by Phineas, fantastic. The songwriting by Billy, fantastic. And just her vocal performance and the way she changes it up each song and from her previous albums, it's just awesome. I've really enjoyed this album, and it's the perfect length that I can just listen to it a few times over and over again. You know, I think I go back to a lot of songs, especially "Lunch" and "Birds of a Feather." But Will, have you been enjoying this album? Well, I know you
Uh,
have,
I'm
but
I'm gonna have to listen to it more, but I the little bits that I have heard I do like, and I just want to say, I've talked about this performance earlier, but I feel the need to mention it again. Billie Eilish's performance of "What Was I Made For" at the Grammys this year, I thought was totally just show-stopping performance. I thought she was absolutely spectacular. And that song has totally just stuck with me ever since seeing her perform that. But I pulled up a lyric here because Cam, I really want to zero in on this because this is very interesting to me. Billie Eilish, folks, has a lyric: "I could eat that girl for lunch." I mean, my goodness is all I have to say. My
yeah,
goodness.
yeah, I know she's definitely really tapping into her inner feelings on this album, which is something we haven't really seen her do to this extent, you know. So I'm actually really glad she's getting more open with this album and more personal. I think that's part of the reason why I enjoy it more, because of just how honest she's being on this record. And she's just saying it as it is. She's saying what's on her mind. That's for sure. Um, so yeah, I can definitely respect what she's doing there, and I think this really is up for consideration to be one of my favorite albums of the year so far. And "Birds of a Feather" being one of my favorite songs, I think it's just fantastic. So yeah, I've loved this album, and Did my mic cut out? Did my mic cut out, guys?
Just for a second, but I can't hear you great now.
Oh, good. I was gonna say I am planning on starting a segment. We talked about it before, called the Album of the Week, and I was gonna start it this week, but I have finals because school's wrapping up for me. So I've been studying for those. So next week we're gonna start. Still haven't picked out the album yet. I have a few contenders for what it's gonna be, but I don't know. I'm going between Beyonce self-titled. I'm going between that, Channel Orange by Frank Ocean, and I think maybe I was also thinking about doing an Outkast album too. So it'll be one of those three for sure. Um, Maybe it'll be, I don't know. We'll see. You'll see when I post it. Yeah, but I'm actually really excited for this because it'll just allow me to talk about more music, which I like to do. So yeah, just wanted to keep you all aware about that and what's going on with the podcast. And speaking of what's going on with the podcast, very soon, in a few weeks, in fact, Fozzie or Cam will be heading to Napa, California, where I will be then meeting up with Will. And we will probably be making some content for the Everything podcast and bringing back Everything Week, which isn't a full week. It'll be 5 days. It'll be a working week, you know. So I'm super excited for that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to start planning what I'm gonna bring in terms of podcast equipment. So yeah, I'm super excited for this whole thing. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it for a while actually. So yeah, look forward to that very soon. And yeah, next up, I briefly wanted to touch on. I just saw the film Furiosa. Loved it. That was fantastic. Anya Taylor Joy. We talked about it on the group chat we're in with He Who Shall Not Be Named, but we both agreed that Anya Taylor Joy is one of the best actresses right now. I think she's just fantastic. In the film The Menu, she's great, and she was just great in this. I think the direction by George Miller is fantastic, and I think it's just a great addition to the Mad Max universe. And although it is kind of similar to Fury Road, that's kind of what I wanted. I kind of wanted that. Um, so yeah, I really enjoyed this. Do you have any interest in watching any of the Mad Max movies, Will?
I'm not sure. I would need to look into them more, but it is a possibility that I might check them out. But what I specifically want to key in on, Tim, is that I've seen a lot of the headlines about how this movie is just not doing very well at the
No.
box office at all. And that to me raises a bigger question. Has the success of Barbie and Oppenheimer last year whet people's appetite for major movies to be like that more and not just the same old stuff that we see all the time? Not saying that Furiosa isn't an excellent film because it's getting very good reviews. I'm not attacking that movie, but that film doing so well at the box office, it makes me wonder if fans are finally starting to crave a bit of a shift and some more variety in the major movie releases. And I personally want to say, if that's true, I would love that. I'm totally on board with that. I've talked about wanting more variety amongst the major movie releases on this podcast before, but also, maybe it'll just be a blip on the, radio on the radar, and people will keep
Hopefully.
loving these movies again soon, because that's definitely a possibility too. But how bad it's done at the box office, considering how great the reviews were, was an eyebrow raiser for me.
Yeah, maybe it's one of those movies that when it goes to streaming, it'll do fantastic. That's what I think is going to happen with that Fall Guy movie, because it did okay in theaters, but I think it's just going to be like a Netflix classic, you know, because there are movies like that that are just like always on Netflix, that are always in, you know how on Netflix it has like most viewed right now, like has the top 10. They're just movies that are always on that, and I feel like both of those will end up being on a streaming service like that. I think Furious is going to go to Max, though. Anyway, both our NBA final predictions were wrong, Will. They were both wrong. um, So we both thought the Timberwolves would be going to the finals. No, nope. Luka Doncic is nasty. Well, Luka's nasty, and although I will say we got 50% of it right, the Celtics are going to the finals, which I'm thrilled about. Um, Tomorrow night, right? Yeah. I will say, I, this is around the time, ever since it happened, that I do miss our pregame shows for the finals because those were some of the most iconic parts of the Everything podcast. But I'm sure it'll happen again. The Celtics and the Warriors, they're gonna play each other soon. Well, next season, so maybe we'll do it again there, and hopefully the Warriors are good next year. Even though they weren't, terrible this year, right? So yeah, it's upsetting, but I'm happy that we're in the finals. Um, Obviously, you as a Warriors fan, disappointing, but I'd call you a secondary Celtics fan, right?
Yeah, and I mean also, look, and I really want to stress this to Warriors fans. This team got you 4 titles in 8 years.
Yeah.
Anything else is icing on the cake right now. This franchise had a 40-year drought of winning nothing. Fans were like when the Warriors upset the Dallas Mavericks during what they called the We Believe season back in 2007, which happened to be the year that I was born. Like when the Warriors as an 8th seed knocked off the Mavericks, who were the 1 seed, fans were freaking out just over that. That's how starved they were for success. So I just want to say to all the Warriors fans out there, is it disappointing that they lost in the play-in tournament this year? Sure. But this team won 4 titles in 8 years. They've given us memories that are going to last a lifetime. Anything else that this core of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green give us is just icing on the cake.
Yeah.
So what do I have to say about a team that won me 4 titles in 8 years and gave me memories that are going to last a lifetime? Nothing, but just
Yeah.
I bow down to them and all the amazing things that they did.
Definitely, yeah. It's super impressive. And I will say, I can't do that for the Celtics yet. And that is something that you can do. And the Celtics can't because, we've come close to winning the finals a few times. Um, once again, once against your Golden State Warriors. But hopefully this is the year. Luka Doncic is just nasty, and he's like out of shape too. It doesn't even make sense how he's so nasty. He doesn't move like a basketball player on the court. Maybe that's just me, but it's just crazy how nasty he is. And I'm not sure if we talked about this on the podcast. We might have, but I heard the take. If Kyrie Irving was like 6'6", he would be the best player in the NBA. Do you think that's a valid take? And he's still nasty now.
I'm not sure about best player in the NBA. Being somebody like a LeBron James or a Steph Curry is, really hard. And I would remind people that even though Steph Curry is not 6'6", he's just 6'3". He's won 4 titles despite not being the size of some other NBA players out there. So, like, best player in the league, I'm not sure if I would go that far, but I got to give it to Kyrie Irving, man. Luka Doncic is amazing, and I actually think Luka is in much better shape now than he was in the past. I know that was
for sure, but still,
I know that sure, but yeah. I think some players may need to play with that muscle to be able to, get down low and crash the boards and dominate in that way. So I don't think, I know people talked about, Luka coming in, overweight, in the past. I don't think he's having that issue now like he has in
I don't think he's overweight or anything.
Oh, sure. Oh,
he just
of
looks
course.
like a guy, though. He just looks
right.
like
No. Oh, yeah, and I totally get what you're saying, and I think you could say, the same thing about Jokic too. Like sometimes
definitely.
Sometimes he may look like he's playing slow out there, but he's actually dominating the game in ways that we've never seen before. But
Yeah.
look, Luka is amazing. no doubt. But Kyrie Irving, he's done something I didn't think he was capable of doing. He's changed. And I go back to my sentiment, Cam. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but if Howard Stern can change, then that gives me a lot of hope that other people can change too. Because let's be honest, Howard Stern himself would admit that he was a horrible person back in the day.
Yeah.
He's completely changed. This is not the same Howard Stern that we've known before. So, in terms of Kyrie Irving, I got to give him his props because he did something that I didn't think he would be able to do. And, it kind of goes back to my sentiment of, if Howard Stern can do it, then other people can probably, do it too. And I think it's really inspiring to see the growth that Kyrie's made this year. So I just have to say hats off to
Yeah,
him.
definitely.
I didn't see it coming in any way. And
I know.
Cam, I don't know. I don't know who's gonna win this series. I think cases could be made either way. I think it's definitely going 7. I don't know. I don't know who to pick. I could argue for either side. I think with the Celtics, there's the fear of, are they going to be that team that gets close but can't quite get over the hump and can't win? I do feel like that's kind of the fear from the Celtics side, but also I feel like this is the best team that they've had in the Tatum Brown era and their best shot to win the title in the Tatum Brown era. And I think you could say, they know Kyrie Irving's game. They could be able to shut him down in ways that, other teams haven't. Let me remind people, they swept Kyrie Irving when he was on the Nets a few seasons back, and they really shut him down. So I think the argument could be made, the Celtics know Kyrie Irving's game well. They'll know how to, shut him down. But then from the other side, you could say, Kyrie Irving knows the Celtics too, and maybe he's going to be able to exploit them on defense in ways that other teams haven't been able to do. But I don't know who's going to win this series, Cam. I think it's going 7, and I think it's going to be one of the great NBA Finals in recent memory.
Yeah, for sure. Super excited for this. Super glad my team's here. And, yeah. Also, next week, I'll be able to talk about the concert for the band Bleachers that I'll be going to on Monday. So excited for that. But for now, we had actually a really short episode. That wasn't intentional, but look at that. 33 minutes. All right. But thank you all so much for watching this episode of the Everything Podcast. Will, thank you so much for joining me, as always. And Album of the Week series coming soon. Excited for that. And, yeah, thank you guys for watching. See ya.